What we're learning that from this Genesis that we can use today. And the biggest lesson is we went over the last three chapters, Genesis 38, 39, and 40. We see that Joseph, amazing young man, isn't he? He was treated wrong by his brothers, although he never treated them wrong in no way. They sold him into slavery, right? Then as he went into slavery, he still kept his demeanor and found favor from a heathen king to the point where he put him in charge of all of his household, did he not? Now, Joseph could have been down because he's like, man, now I got to serve a heathen king. He still did his job as unto the Lord. And then that individual's wife looked at Joseph in a sexual way. Joseph continually denied her. And she kept coming according to the scriptures. He never gave in. He could have said, well, God don't care about me anyway. Got me in this heathen nation. I'm going to go ahead and do this. Pharaoh never know. But he didn't, even to the point where she grabbed him by the shirt. He ran out of his shirt. Can you imagine seeing that in a movie? And ran away. Still not being down. He could have said, man, this was starting to make a turn. It was going well. And now his wife wants to mess with me. And then she took the shirt and told the other men in the house, and who told Pharaoh, that Joseph was trying to, quote unquote, get with her. So Pharaoh came back and was mad. Guess what happened to little Joseph? Threw him into prison. The man still has no indication of being down. He still kept his head up. And then who ended up being in the prison with him? And this is good old God. The butler and the baker. Now Joseph could have said, well, at least I got some company. But they dreamed dreams. And it bothered them. And they were like, man, we don't have an interpreter to interpret this. Guess who overheard this? The man of God, Joseph, who could have been over in the corner just staying to himself. But he didn't. He intervened. You know what he said? The first thing out of his mouth? The interpretation of dreams belongs to God. See how he's still glorifying God in prison. And he told them both the interpretation. He told the baker, well, he told us to do the butler first. He told the butler that he would resume his job. He told the baker, off with your head. How do you think that baker felt? And then Joseph said, when you regain your job, butler, remember me. Remember how favorable I was to you, and please tell Pharaoh. Because initially Pharaoh was happy and pleased with Joseph. That's why he gave him grace. Guess what happened? That day came. Both the butler and baker were taken out. And Pharaoh gave the job back to the butler. And he hung the baker. And then at some point, Pharaoh went to sleep. And that's what we're going to pick up right here. We're going to find out that Pharaoh went to sleep. And guess what he had? A dream. And guess what the butler remembered? There's a guy that can interpret this. Look how God tied that together. Let's see what happens. Chapter 41, first two verses. And it came to pass at the end of the 2 full years, this is after the butler and the baker, that Pharaoh dreamed and beheld, he stood by the river, and behold, there came up out of the river 7 well-favored kine and fat flesh, and they fed in the meadow. What is this? This is Old English. This is like cows or cattle. They're feeding, and they're already well fed. Verse 3, and beheld 7 others kine came up after them out of the river, ill-favored and lean-fleshed. So some were pretty healthy as far as eating. The other ones were a little thin-skinned. You ever seen a thin-skinned cattle? You don't think about a nice cut of beef right then and there. You think, ooh, what's going on? It's a very sickly look. And stood by the other kind upon the brink of the river. So you got to wonder what's going on right now. Verse 4. And the ill favored and lean flesh kind did eat up the 7 well favored and fat kind. So Pharaoh awoke. What a dream. Now, I don't know if you all consider that a nightmare, but for some reason that bothered Pharaoh. Because, see, he knew there was something behind these dreams. And during that time, it's really no different now. You know, you got people now. There's a guy from Fort Lauderdale that he pays to have his commercial on Hot 105. You can come, just tell him your dreams, and let him see your hand. He can tell you what it means, just like that. It's like, really? Or if you read astrology, you got to be careful. You know, you're going to meet somebody real interesting this month. Yeah, you can meet them in Publix on the way going through. Doesn't mean it's going to be your honey man. But back then they had soothsayers, astrologers, magicians that supposedly told you what was going on. But what did Joseph tell us? The interpretation belongs to God. Verse 5. And he slept and dreamed the second time. And behold, 7 ears of corn came up after one stalk, rank and good. And verse 6. And behold, 7 thin ears, and blasted with the east wind, sprung up after them. And the 7 thin ears devoured the 7 rank and full ears, and Pharaoh awoke, and behold, it was a dream. The dreams are similar in that the lean or the corn with the least amount ate up the fat ones, or the hardy ones. And I remember years ago when I taught this lesson, a person said, well, can we use dreams today? And I often say, read 1 Corinthians 13. God used them in a supernatural way. There's no need to use them now because we have the 66 books. People keep looking for another revelation. Well, you know, what's going to happen? All I say is read the Bible. Well, is it in the Bible? If it's not, Deuteronomy 29:29, we ain't got to worry about it. And it's so easy, like when Gail teaches Revelation, it's so easy, like what's going on now? I could easily sit back and say, oh man, they're thinking about taking away voting rights. It was established by Lyndon Johnson in 1965. Oh man, what's going to happen? And they got people called ICE driving around here. They don't show identification, wearing masks, jumping out of a car. What would you do? You probably try to fight because you don't know who it is and doing all kinds of stuff. But we can't trip on that. We pray for that hopefully it's resolved, but we keep our eyes on God because he knows. It's not like God doesn't know, but sometimes certain things got to happen too to make a change. We don't know. Our thinking is not like God's thinking. Sometimes for us to get full revelation, we got to go through something. Thing is, can we go through it by trusting God? If not, we hurt ourselves. Questions, comments? I've been reading and talking a lot. Any questions or comments in context with the lesson? We okay? Bible says in verse 8, and it came to pass in the morning that his spirit was troubled. And he sent and called for, here we go, all the magicians of Egypt and all the wise men thereof. Did he call for a man that knew God? Did he call for a man that knew God? Because that's what he needs. But remember watch how God works this. Thereof. And Pharaoh told them his dreams, but there was none that could interpret them unto Pharaoh. None. Which shows God's hand behind this. Now watch verse 9. Then spake the chief butler. This is the butler that was in prison with Joseph. Unto Pharaoh, saying, I do remember my faults this day. Pharaoh was wroth with his servants, and put me inward into the captain of the guard's house, both me and the chief baker. And we dreamed a dream in one night, I and he, We dreamed each man according to the interpretation of his dream. And there was there with us a young man, an Hebrew servant, and the captain of the guard. And we told him, and he interpreted to us our dreams. To each man according to his dream, he did interpret. What's unique about this, there was only one Hebrew in that prison. So he knew who he was talking about. I would love to know what went through Pharaoh's mind because Pharaoh was crazy about Joseph at the beginning. Verse 13. And it came to pass as he interpreted to us, so it was. Me he restored unto mine office, and him he hanged. Called it to the T, didn't he? Then Pharaoh sent and called Joseph, and they brought him hastily out of the dungeon. And he shaved himself and changed his raiment and came in unto Pharaoh. See, Joseph knew the way to go. He could say, I belong to God. I'm going to go in there any kind of way. He still paid proper respect. Verse 15, and Pharaoh said unto Joseph, I have dreamed a dream, and there is none that can interpret it. And I have heard, and I have heard, say of thee that thou canst understand a dream to interpret it. Now, can you imagine what Joseph could have been thinking? Because as you know, Pharaoh didn't play. You burn the toast, you go into prison. Then if you come out and you still can't cook it right, off with your head. So just think of Joseph thought, well, what if I misinterpret this dream? What is he going to do to me? You see, the reason why Joseph didn't think that way, Joseph always took it to God first. Joseph's concern was, well, I'm not misinterpreting because if God didn't give me the answer, I'm not giving an answer. God understands all dreams. Watch how Joseph responds. Verse 15. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, I have dreamed a dream, and there is none that can interpret it. And I have heard say of thee that thou canst understand a dream to interpret it. And Joseph answered Pharaoh, and saying, it is not in me, God shall give Pharaoh an answer of peace. Don't you just want to shout like you're watching your favorite football team? It's like, this boy gonna score again. It's just good stuff. It's similar to, you want to see some other responses like that? Read the book of Daniel. Not a very long book, but Daniel responded in the same manner. Daniel went into captivity prepared, so he didn't have to prepare for anything. And he just responded. Beautiful, beautiful thing. And we see this with our brother Joseph. Verse 17. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, in my dream, behold, I stood upon the bank of a river, and behold, there came upon the river 7 kine, fat-fleshed and well-favored, and they fed in a meadow. And behold, 7 other kine came up after them, poor and very ill-favored, and lean-fleshed, such as I have never saw in all the land of Egypt, for hardness. And the lean and the ill-favored kind did eat up the first 7 fat kine. And when they had eaten them up, it could not be known that they had eaten them, but they were still ill-favored, as at the beginning, so I awake. And so in my dream, and behold, 7 ears came up in one stalk, full and good. And behold, 7 ears withered thin and blasted with the east wind, sprung up after them. And thine ears devoured the thin ears devoured the 7 good ears. And I told this unto the magicians, but there was none that could declare it to me. And Joseph said unto Pharaoh, the dream of Pharaoh is one. God has showed Pharaoh what he is about to do. Look at this young man. The 7 good kine are 7 years, and the 7 good years are 7 years. The dream is one, and the 7 thin and 7 ill kine that came up after them are 7 years, and the 7 empty ears blasted with the east wind shall be 7 years of famine. This is the thing which I have spoken unto Pharaoh. What God is about to do, he showed Pharaoh. Behold, there come 7 years of great plenty throughout all the land of Egypt. And there shall arise, after the 7 years of famine, and all the plenty shall be forgotten in the land of Egypt, and the famine shall consume the land. And the plenty shall not be known in the land by reason of the famine following, for it shall be very grievous. And for that the dream was doubled into Pharaoh twice. It is because the thing is established by God, and God will shortly bring it to pass. What is amazing about Joseph is saying? First and foremost, he's not afraid to tell him. Because just think, this is not, oh, Pharaoh, you're going to prosper for the next 50 years. That would have been easy to say. But to tell him, oh, it's going to be a great famine. It's going to be very grievous. He said it without hesitation. One thing you don't see right here that we're going to see when this actually happens is how God works all. Remember his brothers? Don't forget about them. You're going to bring the brothers right back around. And you could think, well, Joseph has got the big hit because he's going to put Joseph over Egypt. And now here comes the ones who sold him into slavery. Now he's in charge. What would you do? Imagine somebody firing you, then all of a sudden you work somewhere else and you're in charge. You hear they come applying for a job looking at you. What you going to tell them? Are you fair enough to say, well, he does have the skills? Or are you going to say, ha ha, look how the tables turn, brother? I bet you want a job, don't you? You could better go skipping on down the street and see if they're hiring down the street, because you ain't getting none here. See, that's the flesh. That's what we don't see with Joseph all through this. You see him glorifying God, being a willing servant. Any questions, comments, confusion? Yes, sir. That's exactly right. That's right. If they qualify for the job, yes, sir. That's right. That's right. Bible says, brother said, is we must have the mind of Christ for those on Zoom. Bible says, let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus. Yes, JV. Thank you, sir. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they have to qualify for the job. Yes. Well, with anything like with policy, I know when if ever I'm dealing with somebody that works for me, I try to go around and catch them doing things right. It's like, okay, you're supposed to be make sure you have right the student staff ratio. Can you got student staff ratio? Very, very good. That's a part of your annual evaluation. You did good on that. Now I come back next week and it's like he's only one to 25 kids. It's like, wait, I coached you last week on this, so now I got to write you up on this. Now that's not saying one write up is termination. So there's varying degrees, JV. If they keep coming late, out of ratio, not doing the work, he's going to be terminated. Brother or not, that's because he's not doing the job. I've had homosexuals that work with me, had issues because they knew I was a minister. They thought, you don't like them, but they did the job. And this wasn't my company, I was their supervisor. They did the job. We were all right to work together. Does that answer your question? Gotcha, buddy. Any other comments, questions? Thank you, guys. Let's continue. Where are we, Brother Aldrich? 33. I know he was ready. 33. Now, therefore, let Pharaoh look out a man discreet and wise, and set him over the land of Egypt. Ooh. That's what, folks, this is what you call a job. This is what you call a job posting. He's looking for somebody to oversee Egypt because he knows what's coming. Watch what happens. Let Pharaoh do this, and let him appoint officers over the land, and take up the fifth part of the land of Egypt in the 7 plenteous years. This is clever. He's going to hire a man. That man is going to have people underneath him, like managers, to get all this. And in the plenteous years, which God told him when they were, They're going to take up extra and store it. Isn't that what you do when you know something's coming? You know, Miguel and I grew up in Ohio. You know what squirrels did before the snow came? Gather some nuts. That's right. So they had them tucked in trees, so because they couldn't go out in the snow. This is what Pharaoh was setting up. So he's clever. But watch who he picks. And let them gather all, verse 35, and let them gather all the food of those good years that come and lay up corn under the hand of the Pharaoh, and let them keep food in the cities. In verse 36, and that land shall be for store to the land against the 7 years of famine, which shall be in the land of Egypt, and the land perish not through the famine. Got to give Pharaoh credit. He's planning, isn't it? And the thing was good in the eyes of Pharaoh and in the eyes of all the servants. And Pharaoh said unto his servants, can we find such a one as this? Is a man in whom the Spirit of God is. Now, you ain't never heard Pharaoh talk like that. You see what happens sometimes when people get around Christians that are faithful and do things, it can kind of change them. Remember, I talked about the book of Daniel? Remember, there was a king Darius that came after Nebuchadnezzar, or not Darius, Belshazzar, after King Nebuchadnezzar. And all different kind of gods. But yet he appointed Daniel to be next in line to him. You know what happened? All the people around him became jealous because this Hebrew boy was now their boss. So they tried to set Daniel up. They said, you couldn't petition any god for 30 days except for the king. Now, Daniel prayed 3 times a day, and he wasn't about to stop. So Daniel was willing to be guilty of serving his God. Think about that. Would you be guilty of serving your God? I tell you right now, if they passed a rule or a law that they say no matter what religious institution you belong to, they cannot talk against homosexuality. I know 2 brothers who are biological brothers who will probably end up in jail. Because we're going to do what the scriptures say. This is how Daniel was. And so they came. Can you imagine them up outside of Daniel's window looking in? Look, he praying. Get him. And guess where Daniel went? Down in the lion's den. Didn't kick or scream one bit. Because he was content in being in God's hand. Now keep in mind, he went down in a den of lions now. He wasn't just put in a jail cell. He went down with some hungry lions. And that's a whole nother lesson with the lions in and of itself. Them lions were going to eat you. They weren't going to sit back and stare at you all night. They didn't feed him for that reason. But look how faithful Daniel was. And when they moved that rock in the morning, King Belshazzar came running to see. And his words were, I want to see if Daniel's God is there with him, if his angels closed up the mouth of the lions. And as he looked over, it wouldn't have been easy for Daniel to say, see, I told you I didn't do anything wrong. Would not have been easy to say because that's flesh. You know what he said? It was a common salutation. O king, live forever. And he came back up. Now here's the kicker, though. Those that set him up, them and their families and their sheep and cattle all went down in the lion's den. So them lions got a better feast for holding out. And here's the kicker. When you get a chance, read the last few, 6 verses of Daniel. It says, the king Belshazzar made a proclamation that the God of Daniel was going to be the God of all the world. He proclaimed it back then it was the then known world. Wherever there was people, Nebuchadnezzar was the king. And he said, Daniel's God is the God. One man changed the whole world because he was faithful. Never underestimate what you can be when you're a Christian. Does that make sense? We had first bell, right? All right, let us get. Where we at, brother David? 39? Here we go. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, for so much as God has showed thee all this, there is none so discreet and wise as thou art. Now, this is the man who threw him in jail. Thou shalt be over my house, and according unto thy word shall all my people be ruled. Only in the throne will I be greater than that. That's like vice president. You know what's amazing about that? Think of Joseph woke up one day and said, you know what? I want to be prime minister of Egypt. Let me go ahead and get my cabinet together and run. Joseph would have never won going the traditional ways. Joseph made it to the head of Egypt by going to jail. But you know what the real lesson is? You can't look at the circumstances. You got to look at who you serve. Because who you serve, the opportunities are endless. You don't know how things will line up when you serve God. The Bible says in verse 41, and Pharaoh said unto Joseph, see, I have set thee over all the land of Egypt. That's called a prime minister. And Pharaoh took off his ring from his hand and put it upon Joseph's hand. Now, that doesn't sound like a big deal now. You know how big that was back then? Joseph could seal stuff as if he was the man. That's heavy. Remember when Joseph went down in the lion's den when they rolled a rock over? You know what Belshazzar had to do? He had to seal it with his ring. They put wax on it and he sealed it, which means this is official. It can't be unchanged. Joseph had that power now. Isn't God amazing? And Pharaoh took off his ring, verse 42, from his hand and put it upon Joseph's hand and arrayed him in vestures of fine linen and put a gold chain about his neck. And that gold chain might be just as popular now as it was back then. But can you imagine coming out of prison to all this? Can you imagine what that could, if you aren't careful, what that could do to the flesh? Well, I'm the man now. Having all this, because this doesn't go to your head, and this is why I can't wait till you all see when he sees his brothers again. Because he has almost all power now. Let's see what he does with it. That was the second bell, right? We're going to close out. Any closing comments or questions before we stop, because we want to be obedient. Lord's will, on Sunday, we'll pick up at verse 43. Any questions, comments, confusion? Thank you all. Bow with me in prayer.